ワンピースは実在する。
俺はモンキー D ルフィ。お前らを超えて海賊王になる男だ。
人の夢は終わらねえ。
Welcome
to Nerdville.
We'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Hey there, fellow nerds. I'm Turtles.
And I'm Fanfi. This chapter, we get to see how Kuma became known throughout the world as the Tyrant, a deeper glimpse into the Pawpaw Fruit's abilities, and how his path to the dark side began.
This week's cover page is all about Odin, hanging with Tanukis. Here, Oda gives us a glimpse of Odin's personality, since Oda has had a streak of showing us people's characters through animals.
We continue where we left off last time, with King Bakori attacking the Southerners. As the south of the Sorbet Kingdom is in flames, citizens tell Kuma to come back since there is no one else to save. The king explains his policy, stating that he is taking example on a nation in the east that burnt away their trash without mercy for civilians. The king here is obviously referring to the Goa kingdom in Sabo's backstory. He says that you need the heart of a devil for this kind of work, and sacrifices need to be made to ensure the prosperity of their nation. We see a crowd protesting at the front of the palace. The king orders the guards to kill some of them to stop the riots. They start shooting at the crowd. As a huge figure appears, guards tell him to stop or they will execute him. That figure is Kuma, with one of the most epic drawings we have ever seen depicting Kuma in a blinding rage. Meanwhile, at the church, they treat the injured. Bonnie looks out to observe what is unfolding, as she is told to stand back due to the light. She mentions that she has never seen Kuma this way. Kuma prepares his attack, remembering the devastation caused by the king. He yells at Kumachi that he will regret this, and calls him a bumpkin priest. Kuma unleashes an destroying the palace in one attack, as they call this event the One-Man Revolution.
It's over 9,000!
It's crazy to think how powerful some of the 7 warlords actually are. Some of the early warlords were kind of underwhelming, like Crocodile and Moria for example. But here we see a clear difference of scale and power, since they emphasize twice in this chapter that he faced the entire force of a country alone, as well as an armada of battleships. Not to mention his insane durability and powerful devil fruit. It makes us think how powerful all the other warlords are, like Mihawk and Boa. With how the other Shichibukai were portrayed by Oda, it was hard to believe that the entire warlord system was one of the 3 balances of power in the world of One Piece. But with more information revealed by Oda, we get to see how powerful they actually are. We cut to Marijua, where Saturn is informed that the Sorbet Kingdom has a new ruler, and wonders who it could be. The narrator explains that the people wanted Kuma as their next king, and he conceded, but is still living in the church. He continues helping people with their pain, although they address him as King Kumachi now. Kuma responds that he is only a figurehead, and Bulldog is in charge. The people mention that Bulldog was their previous king before Bakori, and was a decent ruler, even though the country was poor.
Suddenly, we see a young woman running in the church, mentioning she needs to increase her stamina. Incredibly enough, she looks like Genie. The old man asks Kuma, "Who's the babe you've got running laps?" As one of the bullies and Kuma are shocked, wondering what's happening. She addresses the group, asking why they are looking at her like that, adding she wants to be ready to sail with daddy. The group is even more confused, as they realize that she is Bonnie. She looks at herself in the mirror, then reverts to a child, as Kuma falls to the floor in shock. The bully asking when and did she eat a devil fruit. They mention that she probably ate the HH fruit.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Turtles, but I need a sec right here. It's really frustrating again to see how, Oda does things off panel, but as opposed to when we saw it with Law and Blackbeard, we knew the situation, so it wasn't annoying. Here it just seems like it's just out of nowhere. There's no explanation. It's really annoying. I'm sick of this.
Okay, let's have Fanfi calm down and try to find a logical explanation. Vegapunk has described devil fruits as the manifestation of someone's desire. We know that Bonnie wanted nothing more than to be 10 and not to be sick anymore. In that case, it's possible that the fruit manifested due to her extreme will to be older, and she was able to eat it, since we know that certain fruits have wills of their own. Also, Bonnie, the glutton, would not hesitate to eat a strange fruit that looks yummy. Did you ever notice that a lot of characters eat a fruit as children, such as Luffy, Yamato, Law, Kuma, Bonnie, and even Big Mom? It would make sense that devil fruits are drawn to children, since they have such an active imagination. While Bonnie is trying to turn herself into an old lady, someone enters the church, saying that Bulldog wants an audience. The bully grabs the old lady, saying that Bonnie did it, even though we clearly see that she's still trying and that he is mistaken. Bulldog enters, meeting Bonnie for the first time, calling her princess, saying that he has some news, also hilariously stating that it's good that they have met his mother, that the bully believes to be Bonnie. He has come to let Kuma know that King Bikori is plotting to return. Kuma is shown an article that depicts him as a tyrant, having taken the throne, assaulting villages. Again, we see the propaganda machine that the world government is, as they slander Kuma's name and confirms that Kuma was never as he was presented to us. This makes sense since everything we saw from Kuma was in complete opposition with the tyrant title that was given to him. Bulldog adds that this proves that Bikori still has the backing of the Celestial Dragons, which makes sense since the world government would never want a buccaneer on the throne. The old folk declare they never want to see his face again. Kuma agrees and says he will never let Bikori return to Sorbet. He affirms that he will do what he can if Bikori returns, but he will have to leave the country since he is branded a criminal. So he asks Bulldog if he wouldn't mind claiming the title of king, also demanding that Bonnie stays with them. As we see Bonnie finally succeeding in transforming, Kuma picks up the wrong old lady and asks Bonnie to behave while he's away.
This is very funny, since when Bonnie infiltrates Marie Joie, she uses the Queen Dowager cover to bypass the guards of Pangaea Castle, since even her father confused them, so infiltrating would be an easy task. The Marines and Bikori arrive just as Kuma is leaving. The former king yells out to the Marines to shoot Kuma immediately, and that he is the dictator usurper, and that he isn't the rightful ruler of Sorbet. Obviously, Kuma eradicates the entire armada on his own. The narrator continues stating that Kuma was branded a pirate and was given a bounty. We return to Sorbet, where we see Bonnie missing her dad. She is with Queen Connie, who lets her know that her dad is a hero that everyone misses. Bonnie exclaims that she will be cured once she turns 10, and she will be a pirate just like her father.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
We cut back to Kuma's adventures at sea, trying to find a cure for Bonnie's illness. He passes through many islands, but these islands aren't just any islands, since we have seen them before. They were the places he sent all the Straw Hats after Sabaody. From these panels and the previous chapter, it looks like Kuma's teleportation skill only works in places he has visited. This is why he ended up at the church when they managed to escape the God Valley incident. Probably the only places he knew was the church and Marie Joie. Kuma visiting these places explains how he knew where to send each Straw Hat to the destination they needed. Kuma, while traveling, not finding any clues to a cure, is devastated, and his thoughts linger on what the doctor said, that she only has 5 years at best. He finally meets Dragon's ship on his travels, where someone yells out, "It's him!" where we see a young Bello Betty accompanied by Morley and other revolutionaries. Dragon lets Kuma know that Eva and Inazuma were caught and sent to prison. We know that the prison that they were sent to ended up being Impel Down. Bello Betty lets Kumachi know that no one in the revolutionary army believes this propaganda. He also asks Kuma if he would mind letting her be the captain of the Eastern Forces, replacing Ginny. Kuma agrees, saying that she is perfect for the role. Dragon continues by mentioning Sabo and Koala, and would love for Kuma to see how far they've come. Kuma wants to return to the revolutionaries, but still needs to find a cure for Bonnie. Dragon chimes in by asking Kuma if he's ever heard of Vegapunk, and that he needs to switch labs soon, potentially giving Kuma the opportunity to meet him. Kuma takes his leave, thanking Dragon for the lead, stating that after he cures Bonnie, he will return to fight by his side. Dragon mentions here, "Go where the wind of fates take you, my friend."
Dragon is nothing like we expected. He seems easygoing and very empathetic. Also, his mentioning of the winds of fate is very interesting, since one of the themes of One Piece is destiny or fate. And in a funny way, Luffy, despite not knowing anything about his father, is so similar. Kuma returns to the church where we see Bonnie has been training, and just destroyed a full adult. They arrive at the island that would eventually become Egghead, and they finally get to meet the famous scientist. Vegapunk is amazed at Kuma's body and requests to study him, for the sake of science of course. Vegapunk examines her, and is surprised to see the sapphire scale disease, and the level of containment achieved, adding that he can cure her by using a brand new method in the medical field. He starts explaining that he will do stem cell transplant, and that it would cost as much as creating a cyborg. It's quite tragic that Kuma asks if Vegapunk is going to try to turn Bonnie into a cyborg, since he ends up becoming one himself probably in the next chapter. While Vegapunk examines Kuma's results, he is shocked at the revelation that he is a buccaneer. He reminds Kuma that he works with the world government, insinuating that he should not reveal this info lightly, while Kuma answers that he trusts Dragon, and that it seems that he trusts Vegapunk. Vegapunk explains his intention to clone Kuma and to complete the soldier project. He proposes a deal to Kuma, in which if he decides to donate some blood for his clone project, he will waive the medical expenses for Bonnie, since he assumes that they don't have any money.
Kuma lets us know that he can't pass on this offer, and asks what he plans to do with the clone. Vegapunk responds by confirming Kuma's suspicions, that they will be like Marines. However, will have superhuman bodies capable of deflecting bullets, adding laser beams would be a cool feature too, giving them devastating power. They will be warriors of the future, with no limit to their potential, stating that their main purpose will be to help the defenseless. It's hilarious here that Vegapunk actually thinks that the world government would allow him to create warriors whose main purpose would be to defend the people, since as we know, the world government does not care about the consequences for those who are not celestial dragons. It's especially surprising since this transpires after the Ohara incident, which Vegapunk was witness to, or at least the destruction after the fact. This is further reinforced later when he states that Dragon will not be on board, since Dragon would know the consequences of such a devastating weapon. Also, him mentioning the laser beams is a good example of a scientist getting so excited at taking their idea to the limit that they decide to ignore the consequences of such a dangerous creation, since we know that the world government would easily use the pacifistas to oppress. Kuma admits that he would make a deal with the devil himself to save Bonnie. We all know that a parent would do anything to save their child. Even though Kuma is a man of faith and protector of the people, he is willing to endanger the world to save his daughter. In addition, the mention of the devil here is interesting, since we know that by making this deal, he makes a pact with an actual demon, J. Garcia Saturn. We believe that the world government is controlled by devils, and having a man of faith from a race they despise and a revolutionary, and delivering them a means to oppress the people they want to protect is quite ironic. Vegapunk mentions here that Kuma is quite the saint. We cut to Marie-Joie, where the demon Asmodeus, obviously, states that the clones are meant to be weapons. As we talked about earlier, Saturn calls Vegapunk a fool, and that he has his own plans anyways.
Saturn's ominous look makes us think about how he was looking at Kuma with disdain on God Valley. This could also explain his interest earlier, with who became the leader of the Sorbet Kingdom, since in chapter 1095, Saturn stated that Buccaneers were born to be slaves. Perhaps he will leverage Bonnie's safety to force Kuma into becoming the ultimate invincible slave for the Celestial Dragon, completely insulting his heritage. Since we saw in chapter 1089, Garcia no longer has any use for Bonnie, since she's just a little girl. The chapter ends on two dreamers, foolishly thinking that this project is the means to achieve peace, ironically naming them pacifistas, as they're meant to be soldiers. That would imply that they are designed for conflict, the complete opposite of what a pacifist would be. Kumachi obviously is being very gullible here, since as we said, it's very clear that these are meant to be weapons. So it's very odd that a former slave and captain of the revolutionary, who understands how the world government takes advantage of people, is so blinded by this idea. And it's not just the idea of him wanting to save Bonnie, since he's smiling here. He seems to believe that what Vegapunk is doing is genuinely for the greater good. However, this might be him blinded by his faith in the warrior of liberation Nika, as there are quite a few similarities between the idea that Vegapunk is selling and the tales that the Buccaneers spread about Nika himself. The next chapter will definitely cover the events leading into Kuma becoming a cyborg, since they mentioned this idea previously in the chapter, as well as Garcia stating that he has his own plans. It's clear that Oda inspires himself from all forms of media, especially history and mythology. But could he be taking inspiration from Star Wars here? Kuma's backstory has a certain similarity with Anakin Skywalker. He's a former slave that joined an organization that fights for justice, but decided to become a weapon for the enemy he wanted to defeat in order to save a loved one. Not to mention him becoming a cyborg and having suffered many tragedies. Also, the use of the army of clones to subjugate the populace reinforces this further.
This is our review of chapter 1099 of One Piece. Hope you enjoyed. Do you also believe that Kuma's backstory has some similarities to Darth Vader's? Let us know in the comments below. Positive or negative, we need the engagement. Speaking of Star Wars,
if you want to learn a little bit about the Old Republic era in Star Wars,
how about you check out our playlist on our duo playthrough of Star Wars The Old Republic?
A very cool story.
Embrace the dark side.
Do it.
Click on the next video.
See you next time.
Peace out.